Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Napa Valley Wine Academy's study hall. Today we have a very special topic. We're going to be going over the WSET Level 4 Diploma tasting grid with systematic approach to tasting with Janet Campen, who's our diploma advisor and also a diploma holder, and Peter Marks, Master of Wine. Peter, Janet, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you, Christian. Hello, everyone. Hi. Janet, how are you?
I'm good. Doing well.
So Janet and I are here to go through two wines. Maybe we should tell them what the wines are. We have, first off, a Zonin 2018 Pinot Grigio. And this is from the region of Della Venezia. And then we have a 2016 Silverado Cabernet Sauvignon from the Napa Valley. And one of the things that we were planning to do today is go through the diploma systematic approach, but then really focus on not so much the tasting note, but really get into how you would answer the quality assessment. And Janet, you've got some good points about why that's such an important factor.
Right. So what we see a lot with our students is that a lot of points are missed in the quality conclusion section. And it's not so much because what they don't understand how to assess the quality. It's just how do we actually write about the quality in a way that pulls in evidence from our tasting note and shows the WSET that we really understand what makes a wine have the quality that it does. So that's what we're going to be going through today.
Great. So should we go through the first wine, the Pinot Grigio, and would you like to start off by reading your tasting note?
Sure.
And I must say that, just to tell everybody, we did taste the wines ahead of time, and Janet and I actually agreed 100% on our tasting note as far as calibrating with the appearance, aroma, palate, and conclusions. Well, actually not on the conclusions, but we'll get to that. So take it away, Janet.
All right, so remember when we're assessing color, we're going to hold it 45 degrees. And for a white wine, we're going to be looking at the core of the wine for the color itself. And so on this one, I've got pale lemon. And then for the aromatic intensity, it's not too strong. I really have to get the wine up here to my nose to start smelling any of the aromas. So that's a medium intensity.
And I noticed, Janet, you sort of you didn't put your nose right in the glass. You kept it an inch or two away. Is that the best way to assess the aroma intensity?
Yeah, and so maybe I'll turn to the side here so people can see. But when I start out with a wine, I start down here at my chin and move it up closer until I can actually start discerning what the aromas are. And where I stop holding the glass is kind of how I'm judging how far away it is and what that intensity level is. So that's one way that I assess that.
Good. Okay.
Okay, and then we've got some classic Pinot Grigio aromas here. Lots of citrus fruit, lemon, lime, lemon peel, grapefruit. Peter, I believe you got some peach skin on this.
Yeah, a little bit of not quite ripe peach skin.
Yeah. Some apple aromas. For me, it was more yellow apple. For Peter, it was green. We also got just the slightest hint of whetstone and white blossom for this wine. We'll get back to, how we're assessing that when it comes to the quality conclusion. But moving on to the palate, if we taste the wine, it was dry,
Yep.
Medium plus acidity, pretty low on the body, medium minus body, medium alcohol. Again, on the intensity, it was similar to the nose, so medium intensity. And then all of those same aromas that we also got on the palate. For me, it was much more apple-y. That green apple character came through more on the palate for me. And then something that we both noticed was there was sort of a phenolic bitterness, especially on the finish for this wine. And the finish itself was medium. So those aromas and flavors did not carry through for very long. And so it was more, they dropped off towards the medium side of the scale.
Good. So why don't we go ahead and talk about the quality assessment. And again, this is quite different from any of the other WSET courses where you just state the quality without any explanation. And here you really need to justify your answer. And this is the one area where we didn't agree 100%. You found the quality to be acceptable, and I found it to be very good. I'm sorry, good, not very good. So if you want to talk, maybe just read your answer, and then I can read mine. And I think the point that we want to get across is that neither answer would necessarily be incorrect or correct. It really depends on how you justify it. So you can't just say acceptable or good without giving a good explanation. In fact, we do have an example from one of the diploma reports, from the exam reports that they send out from the WSET office. And here's one person's, I'll just read this assessment, which they considered not a very good answer. And the person said this wine has good quality, but not great. The acid level is out of balance slightly. The length is medium. The fruit and flavor intensity could be better integrated. Good quality, acceptable of the style. So they really didn't say much about the wine, did they?
Right. And so the thing that we see in a lot of examiners' reports is that they want you to be specific and pull in examples from the actual note. They don't want your quality conclusion for one wine to be applicable to any other wine that you wrote a tasting note about. They want to be able to see that you considered the specific components of the wine you're actually assessing, and not just using kind of a general blanket statement for all of them.
Great.
So I'll read mine, and something to pay attention to as I'm reading is what kind of examples I'm pulling in from the note that we had, and also how we're talking about each of the components. A lot of people use Blick, balance, length, intensity, complexity to talk about a wine and to assess all of its components and how they work together, and using that to decide what the quality level is. It's really how you're using what's in the note to talk about each of those different components, the balance. So what are you comparing as balanced with each other? So just pay attention to that as I'm reading the note, and then Peter's going to read his. And even though he's reached a different conclusion, see how we're arguing for the quality level that we have assigned to it. Okay, so I wrote, this wine is acceptable quality. The vibrant acidity harmonizes well with the fresh fruit intensity, giving the wine a palatable, easy drinking quality. While this style of wine is likely not intended to show great complexity with secondary or tertiary flavors, it could be argued as typical of its style. It lacks the complexity of primary fruit aromas other than the simple citrus and tree fruit aromas. Although the presence of some white blossom and the hint of whetstone might provide additional complexity, these were fleeting, subtle flavors that did not add significantly to the interest of the wine. The few primary fruit flavors it does exhibit lacks a significant depth of concentration, preventing it from carrying through to a longer, more nuanced finish, which prevents it from being a higher quality wine.
Very good. Great. And I should mention, Janet was nominated for the WSET Taster of the Year Award in this past year, among the past year's graduates. Didn't win, but when I hear that note, I don't know why they didn't give you the award, Janet. I have to confess, that's really good. So again, for the same wine, here's my note. And I said this wine has good quality. It shows good balance between the refreshing medium plus acidity, medium levels for alcohol, body, and intensity, and with an agreeable medium finish. The wine offers good typicity for the style and is well made. It shows just enough complexity. This is where I think you and I differ a little bit, Janet. It shows just enough complexity, including floral, green, citrus, and some stone fruits, along with whetstone minerality and a hint of almond, to take it out of the simple category. Thus, it's balanced and complex, which makes it better than acceptable quality, although it lacks the intensity and length to be anything better than good. And I think, as you did as well, it's always good to not only state why you think it's a particular quality, but why it's not of a higher or lesser quality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we like to call that bookending. You know, why is it not lower? Why is it not higher? But if it is something that's all the way at the high end and is outstanding, then it's important to say all of the things that lift it to that level. And really, we want to save outstanding for wines that are without any sort of criticism of any kind. So there should be, don't be afraid to use outstanding, but don't use it for every wine, because not every wine will be without criticism.
And did you write a statement for bottle aging at all? Or because that's also one of the things they will typically ask.
Right. And so this wine would be not suitable for bottle aging.
Yeah. Typically, do you need to describe why that would or would not be the case?
Sometimes they will ask you to, they may ask for you to give reasons for your answer. And if they do, the things that you'll want to consider for ageability are going to be the structure of the wine. So does it have the alcohol? For a white wine, we don't consider the tannin, but for a red wine, we would. But does it have the acidity and the alcohol and the intensity of fruit structurally to support aging? And then on the other side of that, is it going to improve with the flavors, with the aromatics? Will they change in a way that is more interesting? If it's not going to change or get better or more interesting, then we wouldn't consider that for bottle aging.
Great. Okay, so shall we move on to the Cabernet? I don't know if we have any questions that maybe Christian can direct us to at this point. Okay, great. So if you like, Jen, I'll go ahead and read the note for the Cabernet Sauvignon. So again, this is the 2016 Silverado Cabernet from Napa Valley, which is a very good vintage, by the way. And as I hold this glass at a 45-degree angle, I cannot see through it at all. I can't even see my fingers when I hold it up to the glass. So I would call that intensity deep. And the color is ruby. Not shown any blue hints, so it's not purple. And I've yet to see any sense of browning, maybe any brickish color or any slight tawniness, so I would call that ruby. As I put this to my nose, I don't have to get it very far at all. In fact, I'll use your technique and go sideways, but I'm already getting all sorts of aromas. And it's not just one aroma. I think to be pronounced, which I'm going to call it pronounced, you need to get more than just one or two aromas. So I'm getting lots of black fruit and red fruit. I'm also getting some oak. And even a little hint of fig character too. So I'm getting quite a number of different aroma characteristics. So I would call that pronounced. And with descriptions such as blackcurrant, blackberry, black cherry, raspberry, black plum. There's some red cherry and red currant as well. A little hint of herbaceousness. I maybe describe that as bell pepper. Not too overt, but it's certainly there. And those are a lot of my primary notes. On the secondary category, I do find obvious use of oak, not overpowering, but it's certainly prominent. And the oak is being displayed here as toast, vanilla, a little bit of chocolate, and maybe even some coffee notes. And a little hint of baking spice, like I would say nutmeg, sort of a nutmeggy character as well. And then finally, there are some tertiary notes that are just starting to come into play, not dominating at this point, but just beginning to emerge from the glass. So I have leather, more of a new leather as opposed to dry leather, some brown mushroom, fig, a little bit of a cooked fruit, maybe some cooked cherries or cooked plum, and just the beginning of that slightly older fruit or dried fruit, which to me is almost like a little bit of autumn leaves, like as the leaves just begin to fall and late in the year. So those are my aroma characteristics. The palate, I find the wine to be dry, medium plus acidity, and tannins medium plus. Really nice tannins that are well proportioned. In fact, I call them fine grained. They don't stick out. They're very polished. You might even call them ripe tannins because they, even though their level is medium plus, they are not astringent in any way. Alcohol is high. Definitely get a warmth in the back of my throat. And then I put down on the body full body. Janet was medium plus, close enough. And I think we sort of talked about it. And we agreed that this wine would be right on the cusp between a medium plus or full body. So either answer would probably get you a mark there. Again, following on the nose, the flavor intensity was pronounced. And then the finish was pretty extensive, but not what I would call long. For me, it lasted almost half a minute, but not any longer than that. And as a result, I called it a medium plus finish. So it came up just a little bit short there. And then I go ahead and read my quality assessment. And the overall assessment for the Silverado Cabernet, I said very good quality. The wine displays excellent quality of ripe fruit and fine aspirational winemaking through the use of new French oak to deliver a wine of very good quality and good typicity for its style. It offers wonderful complexity of black and red fruits with a hint of herbaceousness, well-integrated toasty vanilla and oak, and it's just starting to display tertiary notes of fig, leather, brown mushroom, and wet leaves. The pronounced intensity and great balance between medium plus acidity, ripe and fine-grained tannins, and full body offer a lot of interest in the glass, and it continues to evolve with aeration. The finish is medium plus, coming up just short of long, which prevents it from being of outstanding quality. However, the great balance, complexity, and intensity ensures this is a wine of much better than simply good quality. Janet, over to you.
All right, so I'll read mine. Something to note that Peter has done in his note and something that I'll do in mine is notice how we are comparing the structural components of the wine when we're talking about balance. A lot of times students will write, this wine has good balance, but that won't earn you full points. You're going to need to talk about what it is in the wine that is balanced with one another. So something to pay attention to as I read my note. This wine.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I can only tell you that as students decide they may want to go forward to the Master Wine exam, we have the same issue there with students who don't really explain balance. They'll simply say it has good balance. But this is a really good practice for anybody who's going to aspire to be a Master Wine, because we're using the same techniques here as by really justifying it from the evidence in the glass. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
This wine is very good quality, so I agreed with Peter on that. The higher level of acidity helps to lift and refresh the palate, which balances the higher, riper tannins. Likewise, the pronounced concentration of fruit flavors integrates well with the higher level of alcohol. The wine shows a great deal of complexity in its generous offering of primary red and black fruits and herbaceous notes, evolving on the nose and palate into well-integrated secondary aromas, consistent with higher quality oak maturation. The wine is also beginning to exhibit some tertiary aromas of age, such as cocoa or cedar, although maintaining its ripe fruity qualities, indicating an ability to continue to evolve for years to come, developing more nuance in its aromatic complexity. However, even with this complexity and the fruit concentration, the wine does not follow through to a long finish, which is the only thing that prevents it from achieving an outstanding level of quality.
That's great. And I really like the way that you also brought in the ability to age as part of its quality. I think that's something I could have mentioned. I did talk about that. I did write a little note on the bottle aging, which I found this is suitable for bottle aging, but it is something that I think can be used as a marker for quality. Again, thinking beyond just Blick, things like typicity and ageability are factors that you could bring into the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's something, even though we disagreed on the first wine about its quality level, and it was really how we were interpreting complexity and typicity. If I had wanted to consider that the wine's typicity was enough to lift it to a higher quality level, that's something that I could have definitely argued. And so you can kind of see here that there isn't one right answer. There's just good arguments that you can make. And so it's how you argue for the quality level and showing that you understand what are the components that go into assessing quality level and that you've touched each of those and considered each of those that will convince the WSET grader whether you should receive full marks or not.
Great. Any questions?
Yeah, we do have a question. If you could just quickly show the labels of the two bottles again and talk about the
Sure.
producer, variety, and vintage.
Okay, the first wine is the Zonin 2018 Pinot Grigio from Italy, and specifically from the region of Della Venezia, which is it's an IGT wine, which is a rather large area, but this makes the ability to produce a wine of very good, consistent quality. I think retail is about $10 a bottle, so it's a nice, easy drinking everyday wine, and a wine that comes from a very reputable producer. Zonin is a large producer that produces wines throughout different parts of Italy, and I think consistently they make really excellent wines for the type. And then the second wine, well, one of my favorite producers in the Napa Valley, which is Silverado. Their Cabernet is a 2016, and I believe this retails for about $60 a bottle. Silverado's been around for many years, and I would say they're one of the real, I wouldn't say traditional in the sense, but they make their wines they're not pushing the envelope as far as ripeness and heavy use of oak. They're making wines that are extremely well balanced and drink well when they're young, but also have the ability to age beautifully, as this wine will. And one thing I was going to mention as you were talking, Janet, is when you do these tasting notes and when you're focusing on the quality, those are things that you can practice on your own. You can do what we call dry tasting notes, and I think the quality assessments are something you can easily practice on your own, even without having the wine there. You can pick a typical Italian Pinot Grigio, or you can pick a Premier Cru Chablis, or any type of wine that you sort of know what the quality's like, and then just write an answer so you get used to the routine of writing a note that will have good justification and using evidence from the glass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. The dry tasting note exercise is the most important thing that you can do to prepare for your exams. It's something that I did preparing for mine, especially if you don't have access to a lot of different styles of wine, maybe based on where you're located and what you have access to, or in the current climate right now, you may not have access to a lot of wines at the moment. But writing dry tasting notes, using your book, the D3 study guide has a lot of notes available for you written in paragraph form where they tell you what the typical style is. And based on that, you can write a quality conclusion based on those. Or you can do like a thought exercise where you're saying, okay, let's say that I've got a heavily oaked Chardonnay wine that is a bit flabby. What would a quality conclusion look like for that style of wine? And so just doing those kinds of exercises and games with yourself is a good way to practice writing these quality conclusions.
Yeah, and even if you should write them down, obviously, to get used to doing that. Many of us are not used to writing or so used to using a computer, but you can think about these any time of day. You're out walking the dog, or you're standing in line at the grocery store, hopefully 6 feet apart and all that kind of thing. But those are things you can just think about when you have nothing else to do, and get used to that mindset of really describing it and assessing all aspects of the wine. Okay.
All right. So just final notes, just some things to take away from this. Remember, balance, length, complexity, and intensity. Those are all things to consider, but you might also want to be considering typicity, maybe concentration of flavor, as well as ageability in your notes. And then remember that when assessing balance, that you are using kind of the scales, weighing things against one another, alcohol and intensity of fruit, and tannins versus sweetness versus acidity. So those are all things that you need to be weighing when you're talking about balance. And don't just say this wine is good because it has balance, length, intensity, complexity. That won't get you any marks.
Yeah. Think about you're a restaurant critic. We don't want you to just say, yeah, it's a great restaurant. Why is it great? Is it the atmosphere? What's the chef doing? How is the service? Those are the aspects of the wine that similar to the balance and all the elements that you need to bring out. Which reminds me, I'm getting hungry.
Great.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Janet. That was really good advice. I always follow your advice since you are the diploma expert. Cheers. And Christian, thank you for putting it all together. And cheers to everybody out there.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Janet. What a great informative tasting today for today's study hall. Join us back here on Facebook Live on Saturday at 1 p.m. We'll be hosting Warren Winarski, legendary Napa vintner who helped put Napa on the international map, so to speak. We'll be interviewing him with Monica Vescovi, who's a diploma holder and an MW student. So that'll be back here live Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thanks so much for joining us, and see you again soon. Cheers.